Hi guys, it's Ariel from Seattle Coffee Gear, and today we're going to be delving into a little bit of coffee science. We are going to be talking about the Coffee Taster's flavor wheel. One of the most frequent questions I get asked on a day-to-day basis is, well, I don't really want flavored coffee, but all of these coffees that you have say that they have chocolate or blueberry in them. And I explained that those are not actually flavors that are added to the coffee. They are what are known as tasting notes. And those tasting notes come from a document called the Coffee Taster's Flavor Wheel. And that originated with the SCA, which is the Specialty Coffee Association. And it had been around for a while, but a few years ago, they decided that it wasn't quite specific enough because you have Q graders who essentially are professional coffee tasters. They're the ones who do the slurping when they taste their coffee, and they're the ones who can kind of detect those flavor notes because they spend years and years training. They're like sommeliers, but for coffee. And they decided that the wheel that they had was not specific enough. So the World Coffee Research Organization was founded, and it was basically scientists and Q graders working together to come up with a new flavor wheel that they could both agree on. And in 2016, a new flavor wheel came out, and in 2017, a revised World Coffee Research Sensory Lexicon was also published. Now, the Sensory Lexicon is the foundation document for the coffee wheel. Now, the coffee wheel, it basically looks like a circle, and it's divided up into parts. The big parts are more kind of generalizations, and then they branch out into smaller, more specific flavor notes. So you're going to have fruity, you're going to have floral, you're going to have earthy, vegetal, savory. You're going to have spice, roast, nut, grain and cereal, and chocolate. And then those will branch off into different categories for those bigger categories. So you start on the inside and you work your way out. And the best way to kind of learn about that is to taste not only as much coffee as you can, but also eat a lot of different things, because you'll taste a coffee and be like, oh, this coffee reminds me of this. There are a lot of different growing regions, and that's called the coffee belt. So we have Africa, Latin America, and Indonesia, and they all have very distinct flavors of coffee. So Africa is known for having very, very fruit-forward coffees. That's where you're going to get your berry notes, and a lot of the time you'll get a lot of tropical fruit notes as well. Then we have Latin America, and their prominent tasting notes are going to be chocolate, citrus, and nuts. And then we have Indonesia, and that's where you're going to get your savory coffees from. I recommend trying single origin coffees because those are going to be the ones that are the most different. Blends are kind of a combination of all sorts of origins. So you're not going to quite get what I'm talking about unless you taste a single origin. I would recommend starting with an African coffee and kind of slurping your way through. So right now, I'm actually going to be making a coffee from Burundi. It has tasting notes of cherry, raw sugar, and citrus, and it also has a bit of a floral note as well. So I have my V60 here, and I'm just going to get this brewed up. And I usually do a 1:15 ratio. So I've got 25 grams in, so you're going to multiply that by 15 for 375 grams out. And I'm just getting everything brewed right now. You want to start off with your bloom, which allows the gases in the coffee to kind of release themselves, and you'll see little bubbles kind of bubble up, and that is CO2 gas that gets trapped in the bean. So you're basically just kind of getting everything saturated. You can start to kind of smell those different notes. So it's not just about the taste. You can actually smell some of these as the coffee is brewing. So you're using quite a few senses here. Just waiting for it to finish up. And, one of the things that I like to do too is when I do my coffee tasting videos, or rather coffee cocktail videos, I do actually take the time to actually read the tasting notes and think about what I'm making. That way I get the best flavor out of my cocktail. So, if I'm doing more of a fruity cocktail, then I'm going to pick coffee that has similar tasting notes. If it's something more chocolatey, then I'll go for something a little bit more neutral. So you can take what is in the flavor wheel and apply it to what you're making. And this goes for cocktails. It also goes for food pairings. And when I first started working in coffee, I was one of those people who really, really loved dark roasts. And then I tasted a sun-dried Ethiopian coffee for the first time, and that was kind of what was an eye-opener for me. I didn't realize that coffee could taste like blueberries, so then, I started tasting different coffees and different roasts. So it's a really good way to kind of expand your coffee horizons. So I would, definitely recommend looking at the flavor wheel and then maybe trying a single origin Sumatran or a single origin African coffee. That's just kind of the best way to get what we're talking about. All right, so now my coffee is done. Just gonna give this a little swirl. Now the flavor wheel doesn't just describe the tasting notes, it also goes into kind of the mouth feel and the texture of the coffee as well. So the proper way to taste coffee is you actually want to stick your nose kind of in the cup and smell it. And you don't want to put your hand there because your hand is going to smell like your lotion or your soap. And right off the bat, I'm smelling a very prominent sort of floral citrusy note. And you actually want to slurp your coffee. If you've ever been to a coffee cupping before, they will actually slurp very loud. And that is the only sound that you hear is just dozens of people slurping at once. It's almost deafening. Okay, so first impressions, I'm getting, the cherry note is definitely a lot more prominent. The citrus is more of kind of hitting my nose. I am getting that sweetness. It has kind of almost a thin tea-like body. And the reason we slurp is because you want it to hit your teeth and then spray all of your taste buds. That way you're getting the best sensory experience. Yeah, very, very strong cherry note. It is bright with a thin tea-like body. So that's kind of how you would use the coffee wheel to describe things. But anyway, thank you for joining me. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, leave a comment below, and we'll see you next time.